All right, looks like I'm live and not getting any unstable connection errors. Not sure what the deal with that was, considering I'm on gigabit internet and even on Wi-Fi getting like 700 megabytes up and down. So not sure really what that was about. But anyways, I thought I'd pop on again and go live and answer some questions that arose in the previous live stream. Someone was asking more about things about releasing the nervous system and fluid flows, and then how that relates to internal arts. And basically, I'd already talked about that a few times in previous live streams, and I guess I'll reiterate some of those points and perhaps share more detail and more insight about that, alongside sharing some insight and advice for anyone who's interested in internal arts or currently training internal arts, and hopefully clear up some confusion around those particular things, because the whole world of internal arts and that whole niche in the underworld of that is very strange, very quickly, and not something that I necessarily recommend people jump into casually. So that's why hopefully I can share some insight and clarity on some of these things. So I guess the first and the most important thing to clarify is the terms. So if I'm talking about qi in this context, I don't mean acupuncture, I don't mean Chinese medicine, I don't mean herbalism, I don't mean feng shui, I don't mean all of the other applications of that term, because each context will use the term differently and will very often mean something different. So people, even just from that foundational basis, oftentimes get very confused, very lost very quickly. And for some reason, it's one of these things where the best analogy I can draw is, if you were to say that because you sat down at the piano and like smashed the keys, that makes you highly skilled at piano, that would be patently untrue and honestly pretty insane. But people do the same exact thing when it comes to anything internal arts. They just assume because they have an idea or a feeling or some self-image about themselves, and they move their arms around in a particular way, they assume, oh, now I'm doing this thing, which is patently untrue. And you could say in some ways it is also quite crazy and maybe arrogant and unfounded for people to say, but you could also argue that maybe they just don't really know, because there's not quite the external marker or obvious thing. Whereas if you're claiming you're a you're world class at piano, but you don't know what anything means on the piano, then that's a pretty clear indicator. Or you claim you're 6'6", but you're actually not. Versus internal arts, people, because it's all so empty and confused and muddled, people layer it in with ideology, dogma, superstition, feelings, emotions, drugs, base desires, sensations of all shapes and sizes, thinking that that's what it actually is and that's what it actually is about, which is patently false and untrue. And again, is an easy way, I guess, to get stumbled upon. But the problem arises, a lot of people are never actually willing to let that go and move beyond it. So they therefore never progress, never get anything, and actually exist in a feedback loop of delusion. So that's the first important thing to understand when I'm talking about the context of qi. So it might be more useful to talk about practice qi or cultivated or built, which is something distinctly different than you wake up in the morning and you feel like you have energy. Those are different things. But people get it, again, all kind of mixed in. And to even get inside to the ability to even have this type of qi, to actually build it, to generate it, to store it, is really so far above and beyond what is possible for most people that even try it, frankly speaking, from what I've seen over the last 15 years. And the steps that are required, and the discipline that's required, and the work and the effort and the good luck and the good fortune and maybe the good health and the teacher and the assistance that's required to even get to that threshold is really, that's the pivot to where you can actually start doing anything that is remotely resembling anything to do with chi or internal arts. So I think that's the biggest misunderstanding that a lot of people have, is they think I do this move and it does things. It heals me, it moves energy, it connects to yin and yang, it heaven and earth, jing, qi, and shen, and heart and spirit. They throw around all these buzzwords, right? But then if you actually ask, okay, well, how specifically does any of that occur? Usually you're met with blankness, or you're met with, oh, it's because your arms move in a circle, and the circle is like the yin and yang symbol, and one arm goes up and one goes down, and that represents yin and yang, or all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it just makes me want to, I don't know, jump off something, because it's like, really, you think that's what people dedicated their entire lives to, of just one arm goes up, one goes down, like, really? That's what temples have been built, and that's what people have dedicated their entire lives to learning, and all these types of, fantastical stories, just because you move your arms and it kind of looks like a circle. It, or then people try to go to science type things. It's like, well, if you rotate your joints in this particular way, then it moistens them, and it's good for synovial fluid. Okay, that again all has nothing to do with anything remotely related to chi or internal arts. So yeah, I think that's the first and the most important thing to understand about chi, and being able to separate all the superstition and the fantasy and all the stuff out of it. Which I think, again, to point out a big stumbling block, a big error, a big trap for a lot of people, is they can't get past that, because it's required for your self-image to diminish, to admit you don't know, to admit maybe you're wrong, to admit maybe your ideas about yourself, about being special or different or unique or individualist or superior or sensitive or evolved or cosmic entity being or a star seed, that all actually has to be deleted, because those are all barriers to progress of any shape or size. And it's not necessarily a unique to this particular demographic, to this context. Improving in anything to an extent requires that. And that starts to get into this whole other conversation about, you actually have to be the right kind of person in order to do these things, which is really uncomfortable for people to hear sometimes, because we have this idea that, if I think I can do something, or I feel like I should, then I should. And that's a great idea as an ideal, as a thing that we can organize around, but that's not really how reality works. And in some ways, that's just called entitlement or wishful thinking or superstition or Peter Pan syndrome. That's not really how things tend to work. So basically, that's another area in which people can get really, really stuck, because they think, and again, this ties into the whole thesis of this video. It was people asking about what I did a video about in terms of fluid flows, or opening up the nervous system, or releasing the nervous system, or releasing things directly, or moving blood or moving fluids directly. And honestly, this is all related, because this is all things that have to be in place in order to be able to do those things, versus what people want is for me to just say, oh, just move your arms, or just breathe in a crazy way, or just put coffee up your butt, or just take this herb, or just take LSD, or just visualize a color. But that's all typically nonsense. It has nothing to do with anything other than just whatever that might be. And the fact of the matter is, as an aside, if people are just chasing sensations or experiences, then just go to a playground and run on that little circle thing, the merry-go-round, and then jump off, and you're going to be feeling all kinds of things. And that's cheaper, quicker, faster, and easier than trying to like flap your arms or do all this complicated, convoluted stuff that's usually much more time and labor intensive just for some transitory sensory experience, or just do a sensory deprivation take, or take a hot bath, or literally anything else. But my point is that, first off, understanding that even to get to the point to actually have chi and build it means you have to transform who you are as a person, and you have to transform what your body actually is and how your body actually functions, because none of this stuff is natural. There's not necessarily someone who just wakes up and is like, "Ooh, yeah, I got this. Oh yeah." That's not really how it works. Of course, yeah, across the generations there might be someone with some generational inherent ability, or some, past life thing, or some good fortune, or what have you. Sure, but that's not most of us. Most of the time, that's not most of the people on the planet, so it's almost not even worth discussing. But that's what a lot of people in this arena think they are. They don't necessarily maybe want to admit it to themselves publicly or honestly, but if they really looked inside and really listened to their dialogue, a lot of it would come down to, wow, oh, wow, how special they must be, or unique, or different, or all these little things, which again goes back to, again, being the right kind of person, and having the right internal qualities. And that's more so what I mean by the right person. And if you look at ancient texts or ancient teachings or even religious texts, very often this is what they're discussing. They're discussing the internal qualities of the person as the prerequisite, or basically the doorway to being able to actually do anything at all. So that's really the hard truth that a lot of people don't want to admit. They more so, again, want the previous examples that I just listed of take this, move this way, line your head up in exactly this perfect way. And you might think I'm making it up, or you might think I'm crazy, or whatever, but just go and look for yourself. You'll see countless Facebook groups or online forums, people arguing about, no, your elbow's this way. No, it's this way. No, it's this way. Your head goes this way. No, this way. No, this way. Oh, well, this master did it this way, but this master did it this way. And he's like this, and this one's like this. And they're arguing about all these trivialities, or people get out rulers and measure, like, oh, your body, your bone must be exactly at this angle. Or you have people that are like, oh, you must round your bones. And it's like, what? That's not really how bones work. Or you have people that are like, yeah, you gotta jam yourself into this position, and jam yourself and then hold it. And all they end up doing is locking a bunch of tension in their body and harming themselves. And again, people might think I'm being hyperbolic, but I've been around long enough, and I know enough people that have genuinely made themselves worse, made their health worse, and really caused a lot of problems for themselves by doing this stuff, and by doing it profoundly incorrectly, because of the things that I've mentioned before. And you might have the mistaken idea that I'm just rambling, or I'm just being mean, or I'm being critical, or I think I'm better than everyone else, or some deflection mechanism of some sort. And I can tell you that what I'm doing is sharing with you 15 or more years of experience of mistakes that I've made, mistakes that I've seen other people make, and mistakes that I've had told to me by people much more skilled and informed than myself, and then trying to pass that forward so that people can avoid the common stumbling blocks and the common errors that pretty much everyone makes. So I think that's really one of the most important things to understand. The other thing is that there's another question that I wanted to talk about, which is the importance of actually having a teacher, and secondly, being able to accurately self-reflect. And there's another one I wanted to get into about the obsession with like specific sets or forms, or people thinking like they need this prescription just for them. And if they just get the right prescription, they get the right exercise for them, then that will magically do good things for them. And then what else I wanted to talk about was the actual aspect of releasing the nervous system, affecting fluid flows, things of that nature. So that's kind of the main things I wanted to discuss. But I guess starting with the last thing first, which is the whole subject that I did live streams about before in terms of releasing the nervous system directly, manipulating blood directly, different fluid pressures within the body. And again, people want, how do I move? Give me the prescription, give me the herb, give me the visualization. And I'm telling you, that all has nothing to do with it. And if someone is trying to say like, oh, I have the special form for this thing, they're usually lying to you. Or visualize this and this will happen. It has nothing to do with any of it whatsoever. And those people are usually ripping people off. Because the short answer to how to do all of that stuff is have chi. That's it. How do you get better at internal arts? Have chi. How do you progress? Have chi. How do you understand how they work? Have chi. How do you actually be able to do it? Have chi. Like it's stupidly simple, but getting to the point is not that simple because of all of the complexities and ways in which we all get it wrong, just based in being human and human nature. And the fact that if things are laid out for us in exactly a linear, clear pathway, you would think that would just be really simple. Like, okay, I'll just do this. But human nature is such that if you lay that out, then the mind is like, well, what about this? Yeah, but what about that? But I read this, but I heard that, but I thought this, but I felt that, but I dreamed about this, but I remember this happened. And then when I was a kid, and it's just all this other stuff that has genuinely nothing to do with the chronology at hand. And that's just, again, part of the right conditions of being a person. Because when people think like that, I would say it's near impossible for them to ever contact chi, to ever build any, to ever have any, and to ever do anything legitimately meaningful within an internal arts. That's just pretty much a fact, because that's the opposite mental quality required to be able to do any of those things. And because, like, for example, if you're doing some type of even a sitting practice of some type, and you're absorbing into an object, the mental quality required is to just object awareness and just rest in the object, stay with that, and that's it. Versus when people try to do that, then it's like, oh, I got to do this. Oh, I forgot. Oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, what about this? Oh, here's a song. Oh, here's a movie. Oh, here's a memory. What about this? What about that? Am I doing it right? Is this? And all of that is not what's actually required. So when I say that they won't necessarily get anywhere or do anything, it's not being mean. It's a logical conclusion based on the actual internal qualities which are required, which is what I'm referring to as some aspect of mental stability and some degree of being able to have relaxed, focused concentration, which gets into more of the aspect of who we actually are as a person in the qualities, you could say mental qualities to an extent. And then that's where a lot of things actually happen, which the thing is, if you're visualizing, if you're thinking, if you're emotional, if you're caught up in sensation, if you're caught up in all these other things that I've already listed, you are not doing the right stability of awareness. And all of the stuff that comes in with that, in the subtle modulations of the mental qualities that create a cascade of effects that are what lead to the results, which they really can't be contrived through movement. They can't really be contrived through really anything. A teacher really can't even do it for you, which is kind of the sad truth. A teacher can give you all the ways in which you can do it wrong. They can try to pass sort of methods onto you. They might be able to assist your system energetically to an extent, but really who the person is at a certain point that's it. That's the determinant factor. There's really no way around that. And it's unfortunately the non-populist truth, because I'm not trying to make a business out of internal arts, so I don't I'm not trying to recruit as many people as possible to like bankroll a school or whatever. So I don't mind saying things that are unfortunately uncomfortable. And it's also, again, just what I've seen time and time again over the course of 15 years. I've seen it within myself, and it's been clearly instructed by people much more skilled than myself. So again, how do you release fluid flows, move blood, release the nervous system? Those are all mental qualities, which are based on a whole cascade of prior work, which is having chi and having a system that is actually open enough to do those things. And then having the right mental qualities for all of that to go together. So it's not really a simple answer. It's not really you can read a book and intellectually get some concept. That's genuinely not going to help. And in most cases, that's actually just another layer, which, just as an aside, people have been really confused over the last decade. Why don't I read books? Why don't I listen to podcasts? Why don't I watch documentaries? Why am I not actively, just guzzling information 24/7, 365? Why am I not following all these people? Specifically and exactly because of what I'm talking about here, which is the appropriate and correct mental qualities. And intellectuals cannot typically progress in internal arts either, because all their head knowledge and all the memorization is very oftentimes another layer, and it's usually another aspect of procrastination or some aspect of their identity to be like, oh, I heard this, or the teacher said this, or the method is this. Yeah, but I also read these 39,000 other things, and there's all these other perspectives that must be considered because there's nuance and there's complexity, and and it's like, no, maybe you just need to feel smart. Like the fact that something is so clear, simple, direct, transparent, straightforward, tangible, etc., like you would in some ways intuitively think that's what people would want, but I can tell you to a very large extent that's not what people want. That's what people run away from. That's what makes them uncomfortable. That's what makes them want to go somewhere else. um, and that's where it's very easy to tell how things are, because the people online that teach these sorts of things, whether it's Montauk Chia or people of that ilk, everything they say is usually very vague, very sentimental, very emotional, usually lots of stories and anecdotes. Oh, this Taoist said this, and oh, science says this, and oh, it's so simple. You can just do it right now. Don't even worry about it. People are like, oh, great. This this is it. This is exactly what I've always dreamed of. And it's like, no, that's just someone who's taking advantage of how gullible you are and stealing your money, basically, and not giving you much of anything to show for it in return. Just like in the same way, if you hired a personal trainer because you were overweight and you went to the gym, and the trainer was like, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to do nap time, everyone. So grab your blanket, find your space, and lay down. And for the next hour, just relax. And it's like, all right, cool. And then you show up again the next session. All right, yeah, now we're going to work on napping again. Okay. There's a lot of people who might self-justify and think, oh, this is really something special. But empirically and in the real world, it's not actually going to lead anywhere other than just napping. And the analogy I'm drawing here is that it's immediately comfortable, it's non-challenging, it's endlessly validating. And why I say that is because very often people get into these arenas because they want to pull off into a cul-de-sac that's free of scrutiny, that's free of any type of judgment, that's free of any type of assertiveness. And they just kind of want to they just want a bubble bath for their self and for their life. A bubble bath that also gets them some social credit points and some virtue signaling and some vague sense of superiority or feeling special or unique or different. And if that's what people want, that's what they need, I mean, more power to them. You know, it's a free society to an extent. But I just start to have issues where people think, oh, this is really what it is. This is really what it's about. This is why civilizations existed. This is what people were really struggling about. And then that gets into another layer of this, how arrogant those people typically are, because they're reducing things down to such a low level and then thinking that that's what these high level masters were. And to me, that's really arrogant. It's really offensive. I find it really offensive. I find it pretty rude. And people that do that, I don't take them seriously really at all. And I just sort of give them the kindergarten teacher treatment. Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah, nice. Oh, cool, good. Because clearly they have very different interests, very different goals, which whatever. But that's very much besides the point. I just kind of wanted to go on that brief tangent. So the other, that started with the last one, and then the other one was a question about wanting like a prescription. Like, oh, well, based on me, what do I need to do? Like, what special exercise or what thing do you recommend? And that's going to fix me and make me better, things of that nature. And again, this is another very popular idea, the whole idea of like medical qigong and this type of stuff, which again, sometimes there's a bit of a basis for, but again, if that person doesn't have any of the prerequisites in place, it honestly doesn't really make much of a difference what they do, because they're not actually doing anything. They're just holding a posture, feeling little vague things on their body, and maybe relaxing or spacing out or zoning out a little bit. And that's it. So it doesn't really matter what they do, which is why I think a lot of the exercises that people come up with are so goofy, because teachers probably realize at a certain point it doesn't matter. Just give them some goofy, thing, or put some music on and just dance and have a good time. And they're just like, okay, whatever. Because the point that I'm getting at is that what is transformative is the transformative aspect of just doing the basic fundamental things. Because what will actually heal someone is, in essence, becoming the right kind of person to actually do internal arts. So it's not really something that basically, it's not really something that, yeah, it's kind of very non-specific in that way. It's basically, yeah, I mean, meditation is pulling weeds in my garden. That's not meditation in any way, shape, or form. It's something calming and relaxing that you enjoy. That's not meditation. If we want to take the actual term, which is singular, and take it all the way back to the Vedas, where it originated from, there is only one meaning for meditation. That's it. There's only one type. There's only one form. There's only one meaning. And it's very clear and specific. But again, we live in this fallen age, so anything means anything to anyone, and everyone uses words and however they feel like. But again, calling something for what it actually is, doing something relaxing that you enjoy, that makes you feel nice, is only that, which is great. There's absolutely nothing wrong about that. It's just not meditation. Which gets into a whole other thing about whatever spirituality does actually mean, which again is singular. But what people think it means nowadays is, well, whatever makes me feel good, whatever I like, whatever I say it is what it means. It's like, well, so it effectively doesn't mean anything then. So, and I've done videos about that as well over the years, which of course offended a lot of people. But I just clearly went through what words actually mean and how that relates to what people actually do, and then just went through the list. So getting back to what I was saying about, prescriptions, basically what's transformative and what is healing is developing the right qualities to actually be able to do the things in the first place, which is whatever the foundational fundamental exercises that are taught within a system. That's it. And then what's required to advance those things? What's required to go more higher in the system or whatever? Those things. It's kind of the weird thing about it where the things you should be doing from the beginning are sometimes presented as if like, oh, it's just the beginning. So people think, oh, well, it's not that really that serious. It's not really that important. It's just the beginner stuff. So whatever. And then it's like, well, no, actually this is really important. And if you don't have it to any meaningful degree, then you're already glass ceilinged. And there's quite a lot of things, which is what I'm saying about being the right person and having the right body and having those things interact in the correct manner to produce the correct outcomes. So yeah, I did the thing about fluid flows and nervous system, and then that question about, prescription, like what thing is right for me. And then the third thing I wanted to discuss was the importance of having a teacher and the absolute time waste of people thinking like, oh, I can do it on my own. Oh, I can figure this out. And having the idea that it's like going to the gym or something, meaning like if I just push through, if I just hit this form, if I just hit this movement, then I'll just put in the reps and I'll just progress. And it doesn't matter. I'll just keep hitting it, keep doing the reps and whatever. And it's not really how it works. One rep correctly is better than 1,000 incorrectly, frankly speaking. And when things are usually done closer to correct, usually the time and the reps, especially initially, go way down because the efficiency is not there to sustain it, but the efficiency goes up to such an extent that it's exponentially harder work. And there's these sort of gradations that happen over time. But I see this when I talk to people or people write and ask questions, and I try to tell them like, no, dude, you need to go see a teacher of some type regularly if you're genuinely interested in this, because mostly all this stuff, to a large extent, we will all do wrong because we don't have the right body, we don't have the right mind. And even to like developing chi, for example, certain things need to be turned on by a teacher because they're not necessarily natural or on in people. So unless someone puts the key in the ignition and turns it on for you and helps certain things, then the likelihood of someone stumbling on it and figuring out themselves or doing it, by themselves is extremely, extremely low. Which is what they'll fill in that void with a whole manner of other things that are not really the thing. And I just, again, the point of the live stream was talking about stumbling blocks, talking about traps, talking about errors, proactively talking about things that pretty much we'll all fall into at some point if we're doing it, and hopefully trying to help people be more efficient in what they're doing so that they don't have to waste time and energy. And basically, again, I've said this before, and I know it's maybe harsh or uncomfortable, but I think doing internal arts without the right things in place is one of the biggest wastes of time, period. I think it's completely useless, and I do not recommend it. And I know that confuses people because I like it. I've dedicated a lot of my life to it. So why would I not just be this, proponent of it? And I think it's because I've been around long enough and I've seen enough people waste a lot of time and energy. And I've personally also wasted a lot of time and energy. And most people don't have unlimited time or energy. So my point is, doing things incorrectly or having this naive idea that, oh, I can figure it out, or I'm special, or I'm smart, or I'm unique, or I'm different, or I'm sensitive, or I feel things, or I have sensations. It's not true, and it's not that helpful. It's very, let's just say, inefficient, and there's much better ways of doing it. And the fact of the matter is, if I were to be completely blunt, most oftentimes what people label as some evidence or indicator of them being special, unique, different, sensitive, spiritual, energetic is usually a symptom of organ dysfunction or some type of imbalance in the body. I can't think of really any examples. Maybe one person that I've met in 15 years where what they said and what they were describing was actually not dysfunction or disease. Pretty much everyone else, and every common example that people will sort of wear as a badge of honor is means that something is not right in themselves. But then that's becomes their justification as to why they're special, unique, different, superior, more evolved, more advanced, more conscious, all these types of things. And I just personally I tried that for myself in my 20s, and it's a big waste of time, really bad for health, really bad for life, and I just don't recommend it. And I see people, just people who've been doing internal arts longer than I've been alive, or as long as I've been alive, have nothing to show for it, and their health is not that great, but they have the mindsets of things that I've discussed so far. And again, it's not to call anyone out, to put anyone down. It's just to point out the fact that we are human. These things are sort of built into the fabric of the human condition. And it's nothing I'm saying is unique or special or some higher knowledge. It's literally just the rudimentary teachings of any legitimate thing that I've ever come across. Why? Because humans are humans. Like, there's not really that much variation or variety. There's a lot of confusion, but clarity oftentimes is really often much more simple and direct. But that's often what people avoid. And it just goes back to that degree of being the right person. And yeah, so that's the major three or four things that I wanted to go over. And I know that'll probably rub a lot of people the wrong way if even anyone watches this in the first place. Because I've just noticed over the years, the more clear, direct, and specific that I've tried to get, the overall decline of everything as well. And also people, a certain variety of negative comment being like, oh, 10 years ago, you were so much better. Now you're just mean, or now you're an asshole, or you fill in the blank. And I'm like, the major factor that I can see as being different is a lot of times back then, and even further back, a lot of the content was more your stereotypical, vague, new agey sort of stuff that people could sort of project their emotionality onto. And it hit people, in that way, which is, it is what it is. It's life. It's part of learning and growing. But at the same token, it's also part of learning and growing. And I would hope that if anyone gets older or goes through things more, hopefully they would become more clear, not less clear. They would become more direct, more focused, more concise, more straightforward, more honest, more transparent, not less. And I can say to a large extent, the differences that I've noticed personally are directly related to training in internal arts and trying to improve and trying to develop the right qualities. And that's really been a major factor, which is why I'm saying what I'm saying now. Which is, again, for some reason bothersome, because again, people like the abstract, they like the vague, so that they can make it whatever they want to make it, which is not how these things work. It's not whatever you want it to be. It's not whatever you feel. It's not. It's not really subjective at all. It's quite the opposite, and that, for some reason, really bothers people. Personally, I find that to be greatly empowering, and just like, okay, finally, it's more clear, more straightforward, more direct. So, get a guru to learn Kriya Yoga. I would say yoga is dead, even in India, for the most part. And what yoga is now is external mimicking of people in the past that were maybe quite skilled. And I could give you clear examples of that. For example, people hear about Tummo, the fire breathing, or people see the Wim Hof stuff, which comes from yoga breathing. There's Bhastrika and Kapalabhati, which is like another version of that, or like skull shining breath, right? There's these two things, sort of breathing patterns that people think they can do. And they're like, oh, I'm doing this exercise. Which, yeah, they're definitely, changing their blood oxygen levels and carbon dioxide levels and, things of these nature. But it's completely the wrong way around. Because what it actually is that if practitioners have their certain conditions in place in their body, in certain processes are going, then the breath will naturally basically kind of do the Kapalabhati, sort of like, it'll naturally sort of do that. But they're not doing it. It's the fact that all these other things are in place, and then the process in themselves is doing it for specific reasons, under specific causations, creating specific predictable effects, because it's a process. It's not just I'm going to do this exercise. So what I'm saying is, now what people do is usually just mimic things that should happen naturally as a result of a clear, direct process. And I can give you another example, talk about Bruce Frantzis and energy arts, because they contrive basically everything from what I have seen over the last 15 years. And I actually don't think what they're doing is particularly bad. I'm not knocking it whatsoever, because Bruce at one point was pretty skilled and, changed the course of the whole arts in general, wrote a bunch of good books, has a lot of really good information. I can't say enough, give the guy his credit and where credit is due. I'm just saying nowadays they just contrive a lot of things by getting people to, put your elbow and put your alignments in exactly the right way, because it's going to line up your energy channels, and, put your mind inside your joint and open your joint and close your joint and all these sorts of things. Which, the fact of the matter is, if they actually had chi and could mobilize it to any degree, all that stuff would happen anyways. The opening, the closing, the bending, the stretching, the twisting, all that stuff would happen as a byproduct result, not because they're like, gotta put my mind in my joint, open the joint, close the joint, open it. It's just not. Again, it's a contrivance. It's someone who saw someone skilled doing something and then tries to mimic it, but they're missing what actually makes it work. And the same could be said for quite a lot of things that people have just completely gotten the wrong way around. And you can also see it in, again, at a certain point, you can see these things in people's bodies, because what I'm saying about having the right body to do things, you can see it. It's a very clear sort of shape, and whether someone's open or closed is very clear to see. All the stuff is, at a certain point, it's not really esoteric to any meaningful degree, other than the fact of maybe you just don't know. But obviously there's a limit to that. Uh, let's see. The term internal arts sounds so vague to me. Yeah, I agree. It's not really a good term, but unfortunately, it's kind of what it is. Um, and under that category or under that blanket, you could have like Xingyi, Bagua, Tai Chi, Qigong, Neigong, even mental training to some extent would go under that. But basically, the easiest way to try to conceptually understand it is that internal arts basically means completely different than how everybody actually moves. And it's not natural. You can't stumble on it. You can't really fake or contrive it. It's again a byproduct of a bunch of other things. And it's not more efficient. It's again not natural. It's actually quite the opposite. It's very unnatural and it's very inefficient comparatively. And it's completely different than how people normally move their bodies. And it's not sensation based. It's not like, oh, well, I felt something, so that's internal. No, you just felt something. I don't know, I moved my arms in a way, so that's internal. No, that just means you moved your arms in a certain way. It's again things getting the wrong way around. So yeah, I agree. It's not really a great term, but it's not really a better one as of yet. But anyways, that's all I had really on my outline. As by outline, I mean in my head. I didn't really write anything down. I just had those questions in mind that I wanted to basically go over because there were some questions on the last live stream about it, and I just wanted to go over it in more detail. And I know it'll probably be sort of dissatisfactory for a lot of people because it's not, again, it's not just a straight put your arms like this, breathe like this, take this thing, or visualize X, Y, and Z. It's not really how it works. It's much more complicated than that, and it just bothers me when people try to dumb everything down. And just honestly, I mean, I can see from a business standpoint, because if you understand what people actually want and the amount of people who are really actually dedicated, or even the amount of people who can actually listen, is another key component of all of this. Because I would say, going back to what I was saying earlier about, clear line of focus, things of that nature. This goes back to at least a basic quality of being able to listen. And in 40 plus years of being alive, the amount of people that I've met who genuinely can listen is quite small. Most people just react or project in themselves, or, filter through whatever their emotional bias is, or they just wait for you to, they're just waiting for you to finish speaking because they're already, ahead. Or you can tell they're just completely checked out in general. Or they have some sort of agenda that they're trying to maybe maneuver you into. These things at a certain point are pretty clear and obvious, as distinct from being able to actually listen in a real meaningful way. And I don't mean just auditorily, like I'm listening to music. There's something beyond and behind that, which is a mental quality that I've talked about at length in other videos, and how for a lot of issues in human life that this really comes down to it. So yeah. Matt says, I'm disappointed. The last 4 broadcasts you have made no metaphors involving your cup. I know. I should be like, say some Bruce Lee, like, be like water, man. However much water is in this cup is how much is in this cup. Which, while we're on that subject, I just want to maybe make more people offended and say that Bruce Lee was not very skilled. He was not very deep. His philosophies were usually pretty way off from the actual intended meanings. And I think he sort of started, he's a great actor, don't get me wrong. It inspired me very early on when I saw his movies and read some of his books, was pivotal. But just people think like he's good because he was in a kung fu movies and he was really fit. And this is absolutely not the case. He's one of these people that is very common where they study with an actual good teacher, which he did, and then just gets the very basic rudimentary things. But then because they have a big ego, or they're dumb, or they're greedy, or they're bored, they think, oh, I got this. Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks. I got this. Great. And then they go off and do their own thing like they're some master, when genuinely all they did was maybe learn half the ABCs, if even that. And you see a lot of people like that these days. And I think he was one of the people that maybe just kind of started to usher that in. And that's exactly what he was. So his nonsense about be like water, it's not really true or accurate at all. And it's not really even the right mental quality at all. I think people would be surprised because people think like Woodstock and being a hippie is in some capacity useful or spiritual or evolved or awakened or conscious. They think being really soft is progressive or enlightened, or it's not. It's nothing to do with it, and it's not what the words mean. You talk about relaxation in the context of internal arts or being soft in the aspect of internal arts, it's not what it means. It's not what it's referring to. And the thing is, there's whole entire Tai Chi schools that are just like, be as soft as possible. And they're like, moving, be as soft as possible. Just relax, let everything go. I guarantee you what that's going to do is basically trash their digestive system. They're going to start accumulating a lot of damp in their body. They're mentally going to get real fuzzy and dull, and they're not going to be able to be very sharp and focused, but they're going to tell themselves that, oh, I'm relaxing, I'm releasing, because I'm like kind of spaced out and kind of just doughy. And you also see a lot of people that do those things for a long time. They do get kind of fat, they do get kind of chubby, and they do get kind of doughy. And oftentimes their mental quality is very slippery, where they're just like, they function under avoidance, they function under disassociation, and, oh, I'm detached. Oh, yeah. It's just a facade. It has nothing to do with anything real or meaningful. And it really crumbles under 90 seconds of basic scrutiny. Because the fact of the matter is, there's a big amount of strong focus that is required, but not in the sense that people think. It's focus, but also being released and stepped back and have a certain degree of, being stepped back, which is a whole other long conversation and tricky thing to figure out and get into. But just the whole thing about relax or be soft or be like water, it's completely incorrect. Because, for example, if I was doing any type of training, whether it's a sitting thing or even a moving thing, if you touch anywhere on my body, it's not soft. There's really, it would feel as though I was, I don't know, lifting a really heavy weight or something, but in a different quality, because it's not gripping and pulling in to the bone. It's just a certain other elastication engagement whole other quality thing. It has nothing to do with being soft or relaxed or flowy or, oh, I do this movement, but I never stop moving. And that's what they mean by flowing. And it's like, no, you're just doing some choreographed dance thingy, which, whatever, it's probably a bit relaxing and helps you kind of, get into your body or whatever. But even then, it usually isn't, because being inside the body, again, has a different meaning within internal arts. It doesn't just mean like, oh, I feel my arms, I feel my legs, I know I'm moving, so I'm in my body. Actually, no, you're in the idea of you being in your body, which is not in your body. You're in the idea of doing some choreography or doing some form or some magical superstition that you think is going to balance heaven and earth and cosmic energies or yin and yang or whatever. And again, it's not anything to do with it. So again, recapping everything I said, I talked about the actual definition of chi should be more like cultivated or built or practiced sort of chi. And then basically harping on the aspect of who you are as a person, and that it's not really just like, let me memorize a movement, give me the right movement. And then I talked about the sort of prescription mindset where people are like, okay, but like, I'm special and I'm different, so like I need, like, what should I do, like what's the move for me? And it's like, well, go back and develop all the qualities that are taught in the foundational basis, and that's what leads to the results. And then the last thing was talking about people not having actual teachers and someone in person, people thinking, oh, I can do it all on my own, or I'm watching videos. And again, it's a tremendous waste of time. And I would say Bagua and Tai Chi and those things for people, the vast majority of the time, also big waste of time, because the prerequisites for those things is a lot. And if you don't have the prerequisites in place, then you're literally just doing choreography, which at that point you could pretty much do anything and it will do basically the same thing. You'd probably be better off doing the little fan dances to music that grannies do in parks, because at least that's going to be more fun and be more, extroverted and maybe even move more blood. Or be better off going for a jog or swimming or riding a bike or doing some actual exercise rather than just arm flapping, because people superstitiously think, oh, I read this thing about it, so if I just do this form, then I'm going to get all these benefits. And that's unfortunately not, it's just not the case. It's not how it works. It's not how those benefits and effects are produced. So anyways, that's a bit of a recap, and hopefully that makes sense. Someone said Alberta in the his house. Don't know what that means. What is a good exercise to develop the dantian? There is no exercise to develop the dantian, really. You would need to meet first a skilled teacher who can assist and maybe put the key in the engine and turn it on a little bit. And then from there, you would do the basic exercises taught by that teacher, which are genuinely not very anything that complicated whatsoever. And you just have to spend many, many hours over many years to do that, and also become the right person to be able to do that and develop the right mental qualities to be able to do that. It's not just like, oh, do reverse breathing or just visualize a light or just put your hands in this position. There's a bunch of stuff that has to happen for any of that to even make any difference whatsoever. Which usually involves a lot of discomfort to open your body, to change the body, to open up certain regions so that there's actually something for your awareness to get into. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Nick says, you rock, man. That's nice of you to say. Not sure what I did to deserve such high praise, but I certainly appreciate it. Hopefully the stuff in the live stream has been useful. And again, I'm not just speaking hypothetically. I'm sharing what are the most common stumbling blocks and hurdles to actually achieving something in these things. So yeah, that's the recap of everything. If you're tuning in late, you missed the meat of everything. So I'd recommend and suggest checking out the recording. But it's funny, of course, more people, as soon as I'm like wrapping up and wanting to sign off, and then it's like more people show up. Or maybe just YouTube doesn't push it until a certain time. I don't even know. Yeah, I just tuning in. Well, appreciate you showing up. Just I already went through the whole outline and such. But I will say, for all the recent live streams, basically the next day, when YouTube does the transcript, then I drop in all the timestamps and summary and stuff, so people can see every little portion of what I talked about. So you can kind of jump around. You don't have to sit through the whole thing and just hope that something useful was said. But that usually I can't do that, and usually until 24 hours or so. It takes YouTube a little varying amount of time to generate the transcript for me to basically be able to generate that. But the previous live streams now have it, and I especially recommend the one I did last week, I guess, about people being predictable. I know it's another sort of uncomfortable thing, but I really highly suggest that one and the content of that one, because it sort of explain a lot of really important aspects that I think were very useful. So I think for live streams in the future, I'm going to do one about, we'll have two already sort of in mind. I want to do one more about weed and psychedelics, because that always just seems to get more clicks, but also tends to offend a lot of people. It seems like the potheads and the psychedelic people are sometimes the most angry and hostile to any sort of outside opinion, but talking about that in the context of Chinese medicine and how it actually affects people, and how there's clear typologies and clear patterns that usually develop, which again is sort of what I touched on earlier, where a lot of what people are labeling as what they believe to be positive or some indicator that they're special, unique, different, sensitive, conscious, awake, aware, etc., is most often cases just a symptom of organ dysfunction and their health getting worse. But they wear it like a badge of honor. An easy example is people with, strong environmental sensitivity. They think, oh, it's because I just feel the vibrations, and I know your nervous system's out of whack, and your liver is probably really backed up. So you're just you're just irritated. Basically, it's not being necessarily sensitive, because that sensation is not doing anything productive. It's not like you're like, oh, I feel the lottery ticket coming on. Got it. Okay, I just won $1 billion. Cool. Or, I feel some situation that's going to happen so I can solve it. It's usually more like, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't go here, I can't go there, I can't do this, can't do that, the world sucks, people are dumb. It's usually this whole liver qi constraint, blood deficiency sort of pattern. And it's just a really easy example of that people will think, oh, this is a sign of awakening or a sign of whatever. It's the opposite. It's not something we should want. So that one, And then there was another one based on an article that I wrote about control, surrender, and the politics of orgasm. And again, getting into different typologies for male and female sexual expression, which will probably, again, offend people because they'll sort of feel called out, which is fine because I think it's something that really harms a lot of people. For example, a lot of males just abusing porn, and then a lot of women, having really dissatisfying sexual experiences or just being cut off. And really, the underlying causes are oftentimes very much the same. So I have that outlined as well that I'll go over at some point in the future because I think it's quite common and clear up a lot of kind of weird ideas that people have about sexuality and orgasm, because it just gets looped in with a bunch of stuff that I think makes it more than it actually is. And it's also a cause for a lot of suffering and discomfort for people. But anyways, going back to what Matt was saying about drugs and psychedelics, or maybe it actually helps some people. I guess my question would be how and when. And I'm not saying that that's not a case for that. I think I very clearly stated in the past that I think in some instances, microdosing certain psychedelics can help people. I think that certain people doing psychedelics under the guidance of a trained, legitimate medical practitioner could be useful as well, especially paired with like CBT and other proactive therapies. And then also, I clearly said that cannabinoids very clearly have a lot of benefits for a lot of people. However, that is very distinctly different than recreational usage. That's different than someone just numbing out or disassociating or all the permutations on those things. So I think, yeah, there's very clearly some instances where it could be very beneficial and useful for people. And I think there's a lot of self-justification and a lot of self-deceit that a lot of people do to keep themselves locked in not an addiction, but maybe some sort of psychological dependence. Because obviously, weed is not physiologically addictive like, say, opiates or alcohol. I mean, duh. But it still can be very psychologically dependent for a lot of people. And again, I smoked a bunch of weed in college and high school. I have a bunch of friends over the last 20 years that have been potheads, and I live in a part of the country where people have where weed is legal and recreational. The other thing too is, I guess you said, why do you think it's called medical marijuana if it doesn't help people live a better quality of life? I guess I'm just wondering where I literally just said that I think cannabinoids obviously can benefit a lot of people. And I made a clear distinction between that and recreation. So I'm not sure I don't know how much more clearly I can make that delineation, which what I'm describing would be, medical benefits. What I'm saying is not useful is basically people recreationally smoking weed over a long period of time, because that damages people and causes very predictable and very difficult to reverse physiological and psychological changes. It's not really ambiguous in that way, which again is distinctly different than someone who has, I don't know, ALS or Crohn's or cancer or tumors or, a bunch of other things, to where they already have so much other stuff going on that, like, yeah, that's probably going to be a great option for them, which is why I say that cannabinoids very clearly can and do have a lot of benefits for people, which is very distinctly different than people recreationally doing it. Because very often they're recreationally doing it because of a bunch of other things. That's pretty much what I'm saying. And there's a lot of people that hide behind the medical thing because of their psychological dependence and get very defensive. And there's a lot of self-justification about it and a lot of that. And oftentimes they clearly fit the sort of liver qi constraint, blood deficiency patterns that I talked about in the last live stream. And again, it's not necessarily just my opinion. It's basic Chinese medicine diagnostics, basic repeatable typologies that are observed across a lot of people, and especially people that have chronically smoked weed over many years. Like I'm telling you, it damages people in ways that they don't necessarily realize until usually it's too late. But it's, again, creates the cycle of dependence, because the more you get imbalanced, the more you have to do the thing that sort of keeps you balanced, but just causes you to get more imbalanced, which again, I'm talking about recreation, talking about escapism, disassociation, detachment, checking out, all of those things, which I don't see why anyone would defend those things. Sure, maybe as a short-term coping mechanism until we can find something else. Or sure, maybe someone's life is such that literally that's the best they can do. Okay, I can completely accept that. And that's, the variety of human experience. That just doesn't negate the verifiable, repeatable effects that can be seen and observed in someone through the lens of TCM or any other sort of diagnostic like that. Because, within Chinese herbalism, for example, there's, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 herbs, some insane amount. And each one has, predictable effects because they codified a system over thousands of years. And weed is and has been codified and does have predictable effects and on the body, just in the same way any other herb or food would do. And especially smoking something like, I don't know how anyone would ever think smoking anything would be healthy, especially chronically over the long term. Now, again, medically speaking, sometimes people are in such a bad state that that's literally all they can do, which if someone's literally already in a bad state, that's a different context. That's a different experience. But I'm hoping and assuming and would wish that no one, watching this would be in such a state of imbalance that they would have to go that route. So yeah, I just don't know where the confusion is on that, because I thought that was pretty clear. But yeah, it's everyone's favorite topics, sex and drugs. So anyways, yeah, that's pretty much all I had for this live stream. So if there's nothing else, then again, I'll probably wrap it up. But happy to answer any questions or whatever, if there is anything that people want to go into. Whoops. I will drop a link in the chat for my recent article. That is also a bit of a typology that I'll discuss more in upcoming live stream. So if people are bored or have time, I would recommend checking that out, because there's some good stuff in there. I think it's certainly a meaningful typology to look at. But yeah, if there's anything else, then sorry, I'm just like checking things. But anyways, of course, more people tune in as I'm signing off. But there doesn't seem to be any more questions or what have you. Yeah, I feel like that's just another concession. I feel like there are pros and cons for everything. Balance within anything you do is key, in my opinion. To me, that's like the moderation sort of cope, the self justification loop, because it's like if I drink a bottle of vodka, or whatever, I don't know. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole again, but again, it's just more of the self justification loop. It's another way of deflecting of like, okay, sure, there might be a bunch of negatives, but I don't really want to look at them. I don't really want to consider them. So I'm going to say, well, it's about balance. You just can't go to any extreme and whatever. And it's like, I mean, yeah, it's your own, each our own personal life. But I just think that's, again, it's not a good argument. And I think if we looked at my last live stream where I talked about the feminization of men, that especially comes about from smoking weed chronically, recreationally over a long time. The deference to nuance or complexity tends to be one of the default scripts, which is like some capacity of emotional reasoning over logic, accountability, avoidance, and that sort of like general sort of slipperiness that I was talking about, which again is a pretty repeatable pattern in typology across a lot of like long-term weed smokers and even psychedelic advocates, especially males, which goes back to the feminization thing that I talked about in the last one, which personally I don't think is useful or that beneficial, because if we just look at the things that allow an adult male to succeed in life, to change their life, to improve, to solve problems, to create value, to provide structure, to provide stability, I think smoking weed recreationally over the long term does the opposite of those things, which again is different than, someone who, like, for example, someone who drinks glass of wine or has a beer once a month. Okay, if someone smokes a little weed once a month, every now and again, that's a different thing, right? That's not probably going to have the same effect. But again, habitually, recreationally, stretch out over time, my point is that it develops qualities that are counter and opposite to what typically makes adult males functional and useful and competent in the world. Obviously, there's exceptions. If someone's some really creative, they're an artist or a musician or something of that nature. Obviously, that's a little bit different, sort of a little bit. But even in those qualities, there's still needed. And again, anyone is able to just fact check that for themselves, especially for males, because in America right now, there's a big epidemic of young adult males and even middle-aged sort of males that have no real competency with women, whether they're incels or whether they're red pill, MGTOW, whatever the extreme, or even sometimes falling in the middle. And a lot of that, if we're talking about a typology, usually comes down to escapism, whether it's or disassociation, checking out, numbing out, becoming more sensitive, being more in your feels or whatever. Then basically weed is a big part of that. Porn is a big part of that. And video games also gets lumped in there as well. but it's basically just cheap chemical highs divorced from meaningful action in the world. And it starts to develop, it's basically, it starts to dissolve people a little bit and they become more slippery. And this is, again, fact check it for yourself, look it up. This is a big deal, and this is going to be even bigger of a deal over the next 10, 20 years. It's going to possibly lead to a lot of societal issues, and it already is. And my point is that these things all tend to go together, and it does relate back to the specific qualities and stuff that people have. Again, if you're wanting to talk about hormone exposure and all of this subject matter, let's talk about food. Again, I didn't say anything about hormones. I'm not reducing it simply down to testosterone. I'm not saying anything of that. I was talking more so about behavioral and psychological qualities, which to an extent would have more of an effect on your hormones than not. And I think people miss that. They forget that because, again, they want an herb, they want a supplement, they want to blame the food, they want to blame society, they want to blame a whole long list of things. But the fact of the matter is, it still goes back to who we are as a person, the choices we make, and the actual qualities that we have within ourselves. Because just because someone magically gets testosterone, sure, there's going to be some predictable changes, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to have all these types of qualities. And the other thing we can go back to, if you want to talk about that, is, I think I saw something recently where the average male now has an average testosterone level of like a 60 or 70-year-old male did in like the 60s or 50s or something. And then we can start to ask, okay, well, what were the predominant mental qualities? What were the predominant psychological factors and behavioral patterns that men in that era had that mostly we don't have now? And is what I'm saying is partially and largely the feminization that comes about from smoking weed, not just because of chemistry or whatever, but because of the way in which it makes people behave, and way in the qualities that it does to people, which is going to have more of a negative effect on them than I would say a lot of other things. And of course, yeah, our environment isn't great. And of course, there's all these, things we could be upset about and critique, of course, in the environment, whether it's microplastics or estrogens or EMFs or, synthetic clothing. The list can go on and on and on, which to an extent, some things we can control, some things we can't. And then to a large extent, people still just want to avoid who they actually are as a person, the choices they make, the behaviors they have, and the outlooks they take, and the psychological mechanisms that operate within them. So, I mean, where is this energy for drinking? What you sound like is all the really leftist women that I saw complaining on the internet because when Charlie Kirk got shot, there was a bunch of people who were like, "Oh, this is terrible," and they all said exactly what you just said. Where was this energy for this? Where was this energy for all these other things? And it's like, okay, man, got it. Just keep deflecting. It's fine. Um, you know, it's just the feminization sort of response that I've just been talking about, I think, for the last 20 minutes. And when I talked about earlier about the linear sort of actually being able to stay on a chain of thought instead of going, what about this? What about this? What about this? That's what I'm saying. This is really part and parcel to it. But yeah, you're also not wrong. I mean, drinking beer, drinking alcohol certainly can have estrogenic effects. So yeah, But I think the difference is that I don't know if I see a lot of people that drink alcohol that actively defend it like weed people do. Like weed for a lot of people seems like it's like a religion almost to an extent. Whereas alcohol, I think people can be like, yeah, I know this is bad. Yeah, I know it sucks. I know I shouldn't do it, but whatever. And at least there's that degree of honesty. But yeah, I don't know. And also too, I don't get a lot of questions about weed. Like I don't get people emailing me, or I mean alcohol, sorry. I don't get people emailing me or talking or leaving comments asking about alcohol. So if you're trying to deflect and be like, where's this energy for alcohol? Well, I'm just responding to what people comment on videos or what they send me emails about. And it's usually not alcohol or beer. It's usually weed, psychedelics, porn, women, gotta restore my jing, or something, things along those lines. But again, like I was joking about before, weed and psychedelic people, from what I've seen over the years, for saying things that people perceive as being critical, are oftentimes very hostile and very defensive, and get very tribal and very religious very quickly. Like people, if I said something about ayahuasca or shrooms, you're like, oh, you're just in the dark. You don't know. You haven't seen the light, brother. You just need some Mother Aya. Or like, the ones criticizing it are the ones who need it the most. Just this whole endless loop of predictable deflection and self-justification. But people that do it think it's unique. They think like they're saying something, but I'm just like, dude, I've been in this industry for 20 years. The typology is there. The responses are usually very along the same spectrum of defensiveness or deflection or redirection, or what did I just say earlier? I think I just said emotional reasoning over logic, or accountability avoidance as it pertains to feminization. And it's not just from weed, obviously, but just with our culture in general, a lot of these things. So what I tried to explain and share with people is a different perspective, and hopefully offer people things that generally over time have been demonstrated to be much more beneficial and much healthier, and much more rewarding for people across the board. Because that's sort of been the thesis of the channel, I think, for however long it's been existing. Anyways, but again, this is just my view. Do what you want. It's not my life. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. That's all. I don't really care, to be honest, because it's not my life. So do what you want. I'm just a guy on YouTube with opinions and views, and that's it. So make that what you will. Let me see. I will say though, looks like this NFL game sucks. Glad I didn't watch it. Seattle versus Arizona. Yeah, anyways, I need to go eat dinner and this sort of thing. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, what does it say? Surf Bummer says, I smoke tough. I think that probably means I smoke, though. Abuse the plant right now to avoid emotions around recent trauma. I mean, I'm just saying what I'm saying, and I also understand that life is not perfect. That comment comparing me to a lefty lunatic is wild work. I I mean, it's not wrong though. If you go on social media, especially right afterwards, it was a bunch of women posting, where was this energy for XYZ? My point was just the deflection. And it's also not wrong. I mean, yeah, well, I mean, just go on social media. You'll see it, man. I mean, there was quite a few friends, ladies that I'm friends with, who were like, "Don't talk to me because where was this energy for?" And they just listed a bunch of other buzzwords and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's really the logical conclusion from the event. But I also didn't really interject because it's no point at that time. But I'm just saying that's the only other example that I've ever seen where people saying like, where's this energy for whatever? So yeah. CK Table says some people honestly believe they have an exclusive claim to morality. I mean, I think to our own individual life, then yeah, we have that claim for ourselves. But I mean, we weren't really having a discussion about hormone exposure risks. I was talking explicitly about the feminization of recreational weed on males. And then you try to pivot to the environment. And then you tried to pivot to beer. Whereas I was just continuing to talk about the same thing about the feminization of men that smoke weed chronically, recreationally over time. But yes, see, CK, some people believe they have an exclusive claim to morality. Yeah, I mean, after any event of that nature, people do, at least from what I have observed, is there's a certain demographic of people who need to make everything about themselves. So whether it was COVID or BLM or Ukraine or climate change or vaccines or what happened with that thing, basically people see attention going somewhere else. They see social credit points, being generated. So they have to like harvest them for themselves. And that's how I see it anyways, is because there's certain people who are so emotionally immature that everything has to be about them and how they look and how they appear and how some aspect of their self-image in that way. And to me, it's just really kind of goofy and extremely predictable and so strongly contradictory in terms of all the things they support that they very clearly never thought about. They're just repeating slogans. They're just repeating whatever the media tells them to repeat. And it's kind of like a circus ultimately. And you just kind of say, okay, great. The kiddos are at it again. Okay. But in terms of intellectual honesty, intellectual consistency, logical consistency, any genuine aspect of morality, I think oftentimes they're compensating for their own lack. For example, about this recent event in general, when I was talking about these pretty left-leaning women, I know 15, 20 of them, and they're all on psychiatric meds. They're all constantly going to therapy. They all constantly oscillate between posting really aggressive political stuff and then like really sentimental, like big me or little me would be so proud of big me, like, or like, it's okay, you're going to be okay, like life is going to be fine, or you don't have to have it all together. Just some sort of sentimental self-congratulation with therapy speak. And I noticed they just tend to go back and forth. And because I know them, I know their life history to an extent is full of a lot of bad decisions that they basically have never taken responsibility or accountability for. They blame society, they blame men, they blame their dads, they blame feminism, the patriarchy, white people, like the whole victim complex. And I've just seen a pretty huge overlap of those types of people are very often the ones that have to virtue signal and like yell the loudest on social media about these things. And I've just seen that to be true a lot. And I know that I guess it could be cynical. I don't really feel any way about it at all. If there wasn't so much evidence to support what I was saying, or if there was a lot of evidence otherwise, then I would say something differently. But I've looked at it and I know a lot of these people, and that's just what I can see. And that usually they're, again, mentally and emotionally not well. And then they have, secondly, a lot of victim complex, and they're usually on meds, or smoking weed and or being an alcoholic, and they have no capacity for accountability, and they usually, as a result, have a bunch of bad decisions that they made in their lives that they claim is not their fault. So then they have to compensate and put everything off on the world. That's just what I've seen to be really true a lot of the times, which I think that should be what therapy actually reveals to people and shows them, but instead it's sort of just coddling and validating them and making them worse, which I don't really think is that useful. And if what I'm saying isn't true, then just zoom back 10 years ago and then zoom forward now and see if things have gotten better, see if those people have gotten better. And then fast forward 5 years, it's probably only going to get worse. I wish it were different. Maybe that sounds negative or cynical, but unless there's evidence to suggest otherwise, I don't really know what else to say without just not being realistic. And to me, I'm okay with that. I don't feel any way about it at all. It just is. Like if it was raining or it's sunny or it's cloudy or the sun's going down, okay, that's the environment. Okay. I don't really have any emotionality about it. Yes, Surf Bummer says, I agree about balance. Smoking a lot through life has likely contributed to my excess yin in general. The thing is, there is no balance to doing something that is harming you and imbalancing you. That's not how the body works. And what I'm trying to say is that the imbalance that's created over long-term consistent weed smoking is difficult to undo. It's not overnight. It's not take an herb. It's not get an acupuncture session. I'm telling you, it's much more deep-seated and much more difficult to get out of the system than that. And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, because I'm a bit older. I've made a bunch of mistakes. And I also have people that are older than me who also made mistakes, who also pass things on to me. And I'm trying to hopefully say something that can be useful. And I'm telling you, it's there. This idea of balance, it's a self-justification. Yeah, I mean, so one remedy for creating spaced out is wood. That's when it pulls the energy back down. That's not really how it works. And I'm sure maybe there's some benefit to what you're saying in terms of this herb. But what I'm saying is that's not going to break up congealed blood. And it's not really about energy going to people's heads or their body. There's a quite a bit more to that. And I'm saying, I guess I can make this more concrete, is people think their blood, it doesn't though, actually. And I only say that because I've just seen these globs come out of people. Because the thing is, let me explain this. In order for an herb to do something, it has to be sort of carried, at least physiologically carried, to an area. And if that area is really constricted and there's not really much fluid exchange happening, or it's really tight and congested, then to an extent, what you put in, it's not really going to get and do any much anyways. Unless it's something really, really, really strong, or this herbalist is like insanely good. But I'm telling you, especially people that do it long-term recreationally, it gunks up the system, depletes the blood, and stagnates the blood in ways that little herbs or remedies just can't do. And it's just the facts that herbs in a lot of instances are just not that strong. Which is why in Chinese medicine, they have whole aspects of bleeding. They have whole strategies to actually remove congealed blood from people. But again, personally speaking, this whole balance thing and using an herb to remedy another herb that's causing a problem, whatever, it's not the right mindset. And also, if we're talking about spagyrics, I don't buy it at all. I don't think they are more potent. I think it's someone made up that's based on a lot of hearsay and a lot of nonsense. And I think that very oftentimes the risk for people actually poisoning themselves from consuming the ash is high, unless the person is like insanely, crazy skilled, of which there are some. And I just say this from someone who went into spagyrics, have friends that are into spagyrics, have friends that make spagyrics. I've taken a bunch of them myself. I have a bunch, and I don't really buy it. I think you have to sort of believe in a bunch of stuff for it to kind of make sense. And I even sold spagyrics for a couple of years. So I'm not unfamiliar. I just don't buy it. And I also just haven't seen it. And especially with my point being this whole, have this really bad habit that's very clearly harming me. Oh, but I'm going to take a bunch of this other stuff to sort of like balance it out. And then it'll kind of like balance me out. And then that will enable me to keep doing the thing that's harming and imbalancing me. I just think there's much better ways to live. I don't know. And it just seems like a lot of extra work for probably the same outcome. And honestly, just playing whack-a-mole. But again, that's just my experience and my opinion. People can have their own difference doing it. I just, this whole idea of like, oh, well, it's all about balance. That's a cop-out, plain and simple. So yeah. And I just have noticed too, a lot of times that people that, yeah, anyways. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm not really going to name drop the people on the live stream, but I can say I'm in a part of the country where some of these people live. But if you want to know more specifics, then I'd be happy to send links in terms of the companies and stuff that I have bought from and who I know personally in that world, and also just the bunch that I've taken. But yeah, I just think yeah, anyways, I've already said a lot. I don't really want to keep repeating the same stuff over and over again. Anyways, yeah, there's no other questions. I'll say it again for the 8 millionth time, but I should probably get going, get some dinner before it gets too late. And but I do appreciate everyone tuning in, and I appreciate the chats and the questions, and hopefully there's been something useful. But if you have any other questions or requests, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll do it in the next one. But again, like I said, I'll do the timestamps and stuff so that this will be easier to navigate, because this has gotten a bit long, and I know no one wants to sit around for the better part of almost 2 hours to listen to this. But anyways, I hope everyone's doing well, and I appreciate all the support, all the kind words, and for tuning in. And hope you're doing well wherever you happen to find yourself on the planet when you happen to be watching this. And I'm going to sign off, go eat some dinner, and I will see you again on the next one.